This is Zestology, the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton, sitting on a late summer's day by Tower Bridge in central London, and it's pretty noisy. There's loads going on. There's helicopters hovering above. The bridge keeps opening and closing. There are loads of tourists around, people having their lunch, kids playing football. It's all quite busy, and it's an impromptu spot where I have literally just recorded a podcast with friend of the show, Celest Pereira. Celeste is a she used to be a well-known teacher in this country, and now she's a well-known teacher internationally, teaching yoga all around the world, actually, as you'll hear in the podcast. And we've just finished recording a podcast about something very personal that happened to Celeste over the last couple of years, and that is hair loss. And as we cover in the podcast, it's one of those interesting occasions where Celeste is not a world-renowned authority on hair loss. She's a world-renowned yoga teacher, but she's had to become an expert on hair loss because it's such a personal story that happened to her. We cover that subject and many others in this podcast, and as always, she's a great speaker. And I think on the subject of hair loss, the story is so personal to her that when she shared it with her YouTube channel, she's had hundreds of people get in contact with her. In fact, she says she gets people contacting her every day about hair loss after she talked about it on her YouTube. So I really appreciate her honesty and vulnerability in sharing it with me. I think it's a really cool thing to do because I think there's certain people who are going through that, men and women, who will find this very valuable. And then there's other people who will just take a little dollop of inspiration from Celeste, as she always provides. So thank you for listening to this podcast. As always, it is focused on energy and vitality. And if things get a little loud at certain points, you'll hear Tower Bridge opening and closing in the background. You'll hear that bloody helicopter circling overhead as well. And hopefully all of it is part of the fun, because we weren't actually planning to record a podcast today. We were just catching up. And then Celeste said, look, if I ever did your podcast again, I think I'd really want to talk about this hair loss. And I said, we should just do it now. And whipped out my recording equipment. It's not a euphemism. Whipped out my iPhone, just recorded it on the iPhone. So yeah, there might be a little bit of, I hope there's not too much wind interference at times. But here she is, Celeste Pereira, talking about hair loss on Zestology. We're recording.
Hi.
How you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Sit forward a little bit so you get a bit closer to the microphone. There you go. This was unprompted, wasn't it? We weren't going to do a podcast today.
We were just going to hang out.
Yeah. And when you've been on my podcast before, it's had a massive response. But the reason that we've decided to do one today is because you went through a difficult time a couple of years ago, which I knew about, but you didn't tell anyone about at the time. Or you weren't public about it at the time, were you?
No, I was very secretive because I was very embarrassed, and you were one of the few people that I confided in to get support and help.
And since then, you've kind of come through the other side, and you wrote, did you do a YouTube video?
Yeah, I did a YouTube video about my experience, and I get loads of messages from people about that. So it's been one of my most successful videos.
A lot of people contacting you and saying...
So many just going, oh my goodness, can you help me out with details, and, what should I do next? And I've had the same experience.
So it was hair loss?
It was.
So just like, I know I've heard a bit of it, but actually it's a long time since you even told me. So what happened?
Okay, so it was a long time ago that I just started noticing that my hair was falling out a lot and maybe getting a bit thinner. And I just thought, okay, so I'm a very proactive person. So whenever something happens that I'm not totally satisfied with, I will just start making changes. So I did lots of research about what promotes hair growth or what diet is best for more protein in your body. And I really started making a lot of positive changes.
And when you say the hair, was it falling out, or did it look thinner, or what?
Yeah, a bit of both. I would say that it was thinning at the top, and that's obviously like the nerve-wracking thing of you like noticing your hair's getting thinner. When you're like, oh my God, am I going bald? And
no one wants that. Girls don't want that.
Oh my
guys
gosh!
Don't want that.
And then every time you brush your hair, so much hair comes out. Super stressful.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
So how did you feel when that was happening?
Oh, of course, you feel awful, right? But then I was really good at styling my hair, so not a lot of people knew it was happening, or maybe they did know and they're just being polite. I don't know.
Well, I didn't notice, and then you told me about it, and then I looked, obviously, when you told me, and I could see that it looked slightly thinner than perhaps it should. but it still didn't look. I mean, you weren't bald, were you?
No, I wasn't bald. And
No.
I think that possibly all the positive steps I was taking was having some impact. But still my hair was getting thinner over time. Maybe slower, maybe I'd slowed it down a bit, but it was still happening.
So you started doing all the research.
Yeah, I started doing a lot of research, but because it wasn't really working in terms of the dietary changes I was making, I went to so many different doctors. I just started really putting a lot of effort into finding different professionals that could help. And I ended up going to, this is I think a very important thing to share with your listeners, is I went to those hair loss clinics that you see advertised on the tube.
Yeah.
I went to a few. And it was
more than one.
Yeah, I went to like 2 or 3, and it was crazy because they really use scare tactics. So what you do is you walk in and they put this little thing in your hair, which is a camera, and it blows up the size of your hair follicles on this big screen TV.
Oh.
So you're looking at your own head and they're like, oh, notice here on the scalp by your crown how thin your hair is, and then they move down to where your ears are and look how thick the hair is there. So you definitely have female pattern hair loss. And I'm like absolutely crapping my pants at this point. You can imagine.
So that's part of the way to reel you in.
Yeah, because then what they do is then a doctor comes in. This is just a consultant who does this. Then a little doctor walks in and he starts saying, oh, this is definitely genetic. There's nothing we can do about this. Then obviously now you're thinking, oh my God, there's no solution. All the healthy diet stuff I've been doing has been a waste of time. And then they start giving you this magical spray called minoxidil. And they're like, you must use this spray. This spray will help your hair grow back. So you're in a state of fear, so you make a purchase of a tiny bottle worth £50. You pay £50 for this bottle. And I went home and I started spraying it. And they said, and your second option when minoxidil doesn't work is hair transplant surgery, which is like £10,000.
What is minoxidil? It doesn't sound like it's very nice.
No, so I started
it's not
using
natural,
it. No, completely. And so I started using it pretty much just out of fear. And I started noticing that my scalp was very itchy. It would burn. Hair did start growing. But then when it started burning and feeling itchy, I thought, I'm the kind of person who hates using chemicals. I use natural toothpaste, natural soaps, natural makeup. Everything's natural. And I'm using minoxidil on my hair like it just didn't feel right. And so I stopped using it and my hair fell out a lot worse.
Did you go back for another consultation with the
No,
hair
because
loss
I
clinic?
then decided that wasn't the way forward.
You didn't feel great when you went to see them before?
No, I knew that. Upon reflection, you realize that they're using scare tactics and that they're selling you overpriced products and that they want to sell you surgery you don't need. And in my mind, I thought, oh, this type of place you would go. They would do a blood test. They would take a stool sample. They would analyze your diet. And then they would say, do you know what? Really nothing is working. We've tried everything. Now let's try surgery. Do you know? They didn't do that. And so I knew intuitively it was a bad idea. And so I just kept asking loads of different people for help and advice.
And meanwhile, your hair's getting worse?
Yeah, it was definitely getting worse. And then
did it get to the stage where you felt conscious of it in public?
Massively.
In what way?
So there were obviously gaps in my hairline. And so what I would do is everywhere I went, I was always massaging my scalp because someone told me you have lack of blood flow to your head. So I'd literally walk around like massaging my head constantly. But that didn't work.
Oh, that's really difficult. And as you say, there's a lot of other people who are going through this same thing.
Yeah, I think it's a massive epidemic happening. And I know that there's a few of your listeners going, hang on, I can totally relate to this.
Would this be appropriate to men as well as women?
Yeah, I've had a few guys write to me as well, and they were all also, like, thank you so much for your message. It's really great to hear that there's people talking about this stuff. And a few guys have also had the minoxidil experience.
Right.
And also realized that it actually caused more damage than good, because when you stop using it, your hair gets a lot worse.
Does it?
Massively.
Because you're sticking loads of chemicals into your scalp.
Yeah, pretty much.
No. And then, of course, there are lots of famous sportsmen who've had those similar things that are advertised in the back of the newspapers. Wayne Rooney and Darren Gough, the cricketer, and Michael Vaughan. They've gone and had the actual... Well, they put on each hair separately, don't they?
They
on
do,
your head.
yeah, exactly.
And that makes it look...
But it can be very patchy, because then if your hair carries on falling out in other areas, then where you've had the transplant, that hair stays. But obviously then your hair keeps falling out elsewhere. So I don't think it's a long-term solution.
And it's not a holistic solution.
No, and I think, for some people, I really respect their choices and their decisions. And if they want to do that and it does have a positive impact for them, then, fair play. But make that the last resort.
How much did acceptance and letting go and accepting, because that's one of the things that I'm very bad at. When I'm not feeling well or when something isn't going my way, you said earlier on, you're the type of person who wants to find a solution to a problem. Well, sometimes maybe there isn't a solution and you have to let go and accept.
Yeah, I did struggle with that. In fact, after I found the solution and I started working at it, I was still compulsively checking my hair, super nervous about blow drying it. I had so much nervous energy. And so then in addition to the other thing, which I hope to share with you in a second, I went to also see a hypnotherapist. And that had a very positive impact because he basically just did this one little session with me and was just centered around trusting your body to know what the right thing is to do and your body's on the right path, and just relax and just enjoy the journey. And actually, that little hypnosis that he did with me, it's like he flicked a switch in my brain, because after that I stopped compulsively checking my hair. I was so much more relaxed about the whole process, and I kind of enjoyed just seeing my hair grow back. That was quite cool. I really rated that. I did that as one of my strategies to get better.
Well, you know that I trained in hypnosis and NLP, and we would often say sometimes one session is all that's needed. Sometimes 100 sessions is needed, but sometimes it's just one session.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome that worked. But so just going back, you're going out in public and you're self-conscious and you're massaging your scalp. Do people start to say, what are you doing?
Yeah, so people were quite respectful. I think they sort of knew, and they were maybe noticing I was a bit embarrassed, and therefore they just, they didn't ask too many questions. People are very polite and respectful in many ways.
Yeah. But how long was this all going on for from the start?
That is such a good question, because I'm not great with time. So I would say from the time I really noticed a big problem to me finding a solution was 2 years. But I would say the process was maybe happening over a longer period, of perhaps 4 years, where initially the problem started creeping in, and then from to fully being better, I would say it was around 4 years.
And so then what happened?
Okay, so this is this important thing that I want to share, is that through all my travels and all my journeys and really being proactive about looking to find out the right person that could help, I discovered a functional medical doctor. And what she did was she analyzed my stool and sent me off for blood tests. And interestingly, all my blood tests were in normal range. And all the doctors, the allopathic doctors, were saying I was crazy, there's nothing wrong with me, it's genetic. But she also, in addition to the blood tests, analyzed my stool, and she came up with 3 main things that was wrong with me. So everyone has their own thing, right? I don't want to say that this is what everyone's going through, but these 3 things had enough of an impact that caused my hair loss. The first was I had a very high level of a bacteria called Klebsiella in my gut, which was eating up all my nutrients. The second thing was I was very allergic to gluten, which meant that when I ate it, it caused inflammation in my gut. And again, that stopped absorption of nutrients. And the third thing was... You can edit this, right?
I'm not going to edit it now, you said that.
No, go on. Hang on. First thing was Klebsiella, the second thing was and the third thing was my pancreas wasn't producing enough enzymes to break down food.
Oh yeah, you told me that.
And again to get enough nutrients out of my food so that I could have hair, because your body will always protect your vital organs.
Right. So the body's sending the nutrients to the vital organs and not to the hair where it's not vital?
Exactly.
Right.
But of course that's a sign that something's wrong, so you have to listen to your body and you have to try and figure out solutions. But actually, when we were talking earlier, you said something so smart. You said we're so lucky to live in a time where we do things like stool tests. And we're the first generation that actually experiences that level of care in terms of healthcare and noticing how we can find solutions.
Yeah, because I've had great results seeing functional medicine practitioners, and I think for someone who's listening to this who's never done it, it's an incredibly different experience from going to see a normal doctor. And that's nothing against normal doctors, they've definitely got their place.
Totally.
But you go to an NHS doctor in this country, you get 10 minutes and they're not doing blood and stool tests, and it's not very in-depth, and they're not looking at your emotional welfare and how that could be linked to your physical and mental state. And presumably your functional doctor was doing all of that.
Yeah, she was great because she really did look at me as a whole. And based on, she also very carefully analyzed my diet. She asked me about stress levels. But yeah, she was great. I'm so grateful she came into my life, because then, coupled to the hypnosis, I started seeing great change in my hair.
So what happened? So she said, okay, you've got this problem with your pancreas.
Yes, so she gave me pancreatic enzymes to take.
This wind is doing my head in. I hope it's not going to be too blowy. Sorry if you're listening and it's windy. It wasn't when we started recording 20 minutes ago. Okay, so what happened then? You started taking pancreatic enzymes.
Pancreatic enzymes. I also cut out gluten, because before I didn't eat much gluten, but there's the odd piece of birthday cake, let's dabble. Now I don't dabble at all. I know I can't. And then the third thing was she gave me a special herb. What was it called? The thing in your gut? Klebsiella. Klebsiella. Yeah.
That doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound good.
Klebsiella. I just don't like the sound of it.
There's quite a few different bacteria out there, and that's why going for the stool tests are so useful, because they help to really figure out what it is and what kind of herbs. She gave me herbs, all natural, to kill the thing. And I just feel so happy that I don't have to be in those stupid hair clinics. That really, that's their job to do these type of things, don't you think?
Yeah.
That's what they should be doing for all their customers.
Yeah. And once you start thinking about a natural way of doing things, it seems so obvious to not go to a hair clinic. But obviously, there was a mix of desperation in there.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, and also not being aware that there was a different way of doing it. So you started taking these supplements, and did you notice a difference straight away?
No, in fact, that's one of the reasons I went to the hypnosis, because I think with natural remedies, you have to realize that it's not an instant fix. You spray minoxidil in your head, hair is growing tomorrow. But not with the natural stuff. It takes a bit of time. Your gut has to reduce that inflammation. You have to start assimilating your nutrients. It has to be slowly brought into your bloodstream, and then it ends up like small shoots of hair start to appear. And then you're like, oh, okay, change is coming.
And the hypnosis, do you think that, I think you do seem to be living a very laid-back, balanced lifestyle, perhaps even more so than when we first met.
Yeah, I was working very hard when we first met. I'm still working really hard now, but I would say there's less. Before, I would almost feel a bit guilty for taking time off.
Yeah.
And I know where that comes from. I come from parents who have a ridiculous work ethic. And I think seeing them work so hard kind of made me feel like, oh, Celeste, you've also got to work exceptionally hard, otherwise it's not good if you take time off. And I think now that I've gone for the hypnosis and I've had this experience with my head, it was a positive thing for me as a person to realize that it's very good to take time off, very good to rest.
Well, one of my things is doing less.
I know, I really admire you for that. When you said that on your podcast the other day, you inspired me so much because I'm someone who's always so enthusiastic to do more.
Yeah.
And then someone asked you, what is the next thing for you? And you went, to do less. And I was like, what? This is so cool.
Yeah, I know, because it's so easy to come up with new goals, but I know I've got enough going on, and I know my mind is alive enough that it will think of new projects that it wants me to take on, but really what I do need to do is do less.
I know, I really appreciate that you share that message with the world, and it helps me realize that I don't have to feel guilty for taking time off, and that it's okay to say no to people. It's difficult to say no.
So when you shared this hair loss story, it's very personal, isn't it? It must be really.
I was a bit embarrassed.
Do you find it hard even now talking about it?
No, I'm much more confident now since I've come out the other end of it. I think, you know what the other thing was? I work in industry, I'm a yoga teacher, and I really promote healthy living, and now suddenly my hair's falling out. So there's this disconnect where like, oh, she can't know what she's talking about, what's she going on in her life? And that's just my ego, isn't it? So I think maybe the only reason I do feel confident is because I am through the other side of it. And maybe that is, again, a massive ego thing that I'll eventually learn to overcome.
Yeah. No, I get that wouldn't have been easy.
It was hard.
Yeah. But of course, people also really appreciate vulnerability. And so when you did share that message, you had a massive response, right?
Yeah, so many. I get daily emails from people just going, oh my goodness, thank you so much for that message.
Is that one of your most shared videos or watched videos?
I think it's up there, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't checked the views on my YouTube channel for a long time because I've been really busy with other things, but I think it is one of my highest viewed videos.
And people just saying they're going through similar stuff.
Yeah, similar thing. They also went to the hair clinics. They also gave minoxidil. They want to know how I went about finding a functional medical doctor and what my experiences were.
So what percentage, what proportion of the kind of hair of you sorting out this problem, how much would you say it was down to the supplements that you took, and how much would you say it's been down to a different mental approach? How would you divide up that
great
percentage?
Question, Tony. Very difficult to answer that. I don't think life is linear enough to really define it in that way.
Well, I'm going to ask you to try. I mean, what do you think was the most important thing?
I would say that the most important thing was going to see the doctor and getting decent help for a problem that I had. But I would say that the process maybe would have taken a lot longer had my mindset not been given that positive shift. Totally.
And what would you say to anyone who's who is going through those worries now, male or female?
I know how hard it is, and I can really appreciate how scary it can be, because so much of our identity is tied up into how we look.
Yeah.
And especially, I think there is a social acceptance around men losing their hair, and I know it's still hard for guys. I'm not trying to dampen that at all, but I think there is a massive stigma towards women losing their hair. That's a very, very different ballgame, but it is on the rise. Honestly, I'm obviously on the London Underground quite regularly. That's how I travel the city for my job. And I would say that every week I see one person. Every week.
Really?
It's huge. Women, yeah.
Do you think, I know that one of my podcasts that you listened to that you enjoyed was John Gray.
Yeah, he's one of my favourites.
Yeah. And these guys next to us are really getting involved with their little picnic, aren't they?
I love them. They're great.
Yeah, it's very enthusiastic. This is probably one of the busiest sounding podcasts I've ever recorded. You've got helicopters overhead. You've got pleasure boats going down the Thames.
This little kid on his bicycle ringing the bell.
And I don't know what these guys. Oh, hang on. What are they? They're videoing the opening of Tower Bridge, aren't they?
Oh, that's so cool. So I've never seen that before.
Should probably explain we're sitting by Tower Bridge. And they've opened the bridge, which, you know what tourists are very excited about. Locals just know that it means a massive traffic backlog for about 20 minutes.
Everyone's like, great, they're opening the bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So something's going to come through that's tall, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
That's why they open it.
I can't see it, but everyone's getting excited about it. One of the things that John Gray was talking about that I know resonated with you was women getting too much into their masculine side
thank you for bringing
men
this up.
getting into their feminine side.
Okay, you're just so smart, Tony. You've got such a good brain. That's why I like you. You got a good. No, you do. You have a good brain.
What's by the way? Just what is that music?
Something is coming through.
Really bizarre going on. There's something playing music going. Anyway, if you can hear music in the background, we don't know either.
We apologise.
It's something quite fun, but we don't know what.
So John Gray, what he said, which helped me a lot, because my job often involves a lot of long periods of time of being very hyper aware, very on, leading big groups of people. Sometimes I'll do it for a whole day, 2 days in a row, and then fly in and out of different countries either side of that. So not a lot of downtime. And I would say that since listening to his podcast, he taught me the fact that when I'm doing that, of course it's amazing, I'm achieving so much, but I'm boosting my testosterone levels. And they're going through the roof, and that's why I get so tired when I come back, because I used to compare myself to other people who did the same thing, and they'd come back like full of energy, like, yeah, that was awesome, dude. And I was like, wonder why that guy is not getting tired from it, but I am. And I almost judged myself a bit for it, but then I realized, no, we've got a total different chemical makeup, and that his testosterone is obviously feeding his energy and making him feel like Superman. But for me, it's the exact opposite. It's actually bringing me down, and it's taking my estrogen away. And so having long moments where I just lie in my bathtub with some salt and candles, this is like a ritual every night now I do this, that boosts my estrogen levels. And that's been really, really positive introduction into my life, just knowing that information.
And do you think that knowing what you know about that now, do you think that might have had any impact in the hair loss as well?
Yes, because one of the things that Pam taught me, my functional medical doctor, was that when you have high levels of testosterone, actually that affects hair growth as well, especially in female pattern hair loss. So definitely like balancing my hormones constantly. Now I know I'm keeping my body in check.
Oh, look at that. It's a massive boat going through Tower Bridge now.
Beautiful.
People are cheering and all sorts.
It's got flags on it. It's so pretty.
Yeah. Did you ever take a supplement to boost your estrogen levels and lower your testosterone levels?
No, just natural. I actually, in his book, Beyond Mars and Venus, I would say the first 30% of that, with all due respect to John Gray, is my favorite person, like I think with so much respect, the first 30% has got a level of repetition, and I think it's because he needs to drive home a point. After that, it becomes very interesting and juicy in terms of information, and there he starts listing out the qualities of the masculine and the qualities of the feminine. And I actually sat with my phone on notes and made little notes on all the different qualities of the feminine. And then what I did is I started asking myself, how can I enhance this? So for example, you and I were walking earlier and you asked, can I carry your bag for you? And I don't normally be like, no, I'm fine, I've got my own bag. Not wanting to put anyone out. But then I realized, no, that's such a masculine quality. It's important for me to come into my feminine. And I said, yes, thank you very much, you can carry my bag. But actually I still find that hard.
Yeah. I mean, do you know what I think is really interesting, this podcast? Because obviously you and I have done podcasts before and they've been very popular, by the way. Is this your third or fourth podcast that you've done for Zestology?
I think with the talk, it's the fourth one.
The fourth, with the talk, it's the fourth. So, but we're covering a topic that you're not an expert in it yourself, hair loss. You know, that's been the majority of this podcast. But I think it's just as powerful as speaking to an expert, because it's such a personal story and you've learned so much over your journey.
Yeah.
You've kind of been forced to become a bit of an expert in that area. See what I mean?
Yeah, you're right, actually. I never thought of it like that.
There's a real power to listening to people's stories, and I personally, that's probably the times that I enjoy most on this podcast, when people are able to delve into their own personal experience.
Yeah, and I say this, hand on my heart, you're my favorite podcaster. I don't have many that I listen to, that because I'm busy. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I love listening to music because for my job I've got to make new playlists all the time. So yeah, the most important thing for me is to listen to quality in chunks, like really tight chunks, and you don't waffle. You're really great at bringing the best out in your people. So yeah, thank you for just a brilliant podcast. You've helped me so much in my life just listening to your weekly little interviews.
That's so sweet of you. I'm really
I love
pleased
them.
that you love it. Yeah. And on the subject of hair loss, do you think it's one of those subjects out there where there's not very much good quality information out there?
Yeah, definitely.
All the information is just coming from big corporations or companies that are trying to sell you, you know, Modaxonil or whatever it is.
Modaxonil.
What is
yeah,
it?
Minoxidil. Yeah, you were close.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, actually. I think that there's so little good quality information out there. I mean, I was hours on the internet. Hours and hours and hours.
That in itself is not a good thing for a person, is it?
No.
Because it raises your sympathetic nervous system.
And your testosterone.
Yeah, and your stimulation levels. You're just massively overstimulated, your cortisol levels.
And yeah, and also the stress, because you're like, but I'm not finding a solution. There's no solution. Oh my God, I've been on here for hours. That's 3 hours of my day gone and I still don't have it's badness. I'm just trying to graphically illustrate how stressed I was.
Yeah. But you seem... We haven't seen each other for quite a few months, have we?
Yeah, I missed you.
Super chill. I know, I missed you. You seem super chill.
Yeah, I'm definitely... And in fact, I keep saying to people, the best thing that happened to me was this whole hair loss thing. Because it taught me so much. And the lessons that I've learned, not just in terms of health, but just me and interacting with the world around me. And the fact that if there is a will, there's a way. I just think it was a very, very good thing. Very good experience.
Well, you know, I think I kind of feel the same way about when I got ill, when I got this virus. I wouldn't want to go through it again. Definitely not. But, well, I wouldn't be doing this for a start.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You're changing the world because of that, you know.
What's going on now?
We're not having any luck with this podcast.
No, do you know what? I like it. The more going on in the background, the better. But, I mean, it's always fun sitting down by Tower Bridge, and especially in summer when there's a lot going on.
We did not plan this podcast either.
But,
this is very off the cuff.
But it is all going on down here, isn't it? It's all quite exciting.
Everyone wants to join us, probably.
I mean, there's thousands of tourists around. We've picked a good spot to do it. So, what is... I mean, obviously I ask everyone, and I've asked you before, what is one book you'd recommend and one tip for more energy, vitality and motivation? Is there any kind of resource in particular in terms of what we've discussed today, or just a general book that you'd recommend that you've been reading and you've been enjoying?
If I suggest a general book?
Yeah, of course.
Because recently I read *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari.
Faith's reading that at the moment. Is it good?
Honestly, it's life-changing.
Is it?
This book is so bright and so clever because it really teaches you, the human, where you come from, but also how ridiculous so much of our life is, because it's based on mass belief in what is not real. So for example, money doesn't intrinsically have a value, but because enough people believe that there's a value in money, suddenly it takes on value. And it's the same with so many things. And I'm a yoga teacher. Now, yoga is full of imaginary things, and people really believe in it. And so I just love that book because it really just made me relax about not being a super traditional spiritual teacher, because I kind of looked at it all and I was like, it's just humans making up stuff. And if you want to believe in that because it helps you, I really respect that. But if you don't, it's okay. You can still do yoga and you can still make it your own in some way.
Yeah.
So I really encourage that book to your listeners if they have the time. It's a beautiful book.
I've been looking at reading that, and you've kind of spurred me on a little bit. And just on that theme, by the way, I was with my mate Phil before we came to meet today, and we were talking quite a bit about microdosing, which I know is another interest of yours. And Phil was saying, he was quoting someone else, I can't remember who, but he was saying, none of us have any idea what's going on and what is right or wrong. We're all making it up as we go along.
Of course.
And having the confidence to do your own thing, as opposed to listen to what authority or tradition or society tells you to do, is pretty liberating, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think that especially us, we're very interested in reading self-development books and going to different talks and speakers. And obviously this interview was based on that same advice. But at the same time, I really want to encourage people, and maybe this can be my tip, to just really tap into yourself and ask yourself, what works for me as a person? And maybe tune out of all the books and all the noise that can sometimes come in, and just ask yourself, like, what is it that I need right now to feel the best I can in this moment? And maybe that involves doing something naughty like eating chips. That's fine, just go and do that, just relax. Because maybe another thing that I'd been going through is I was so stressed about my diet all the time, and I was so worried that I wasn't doing the right thing, that maybe that was a part of the problem. Just relax, just listen to yourself.
I always think that's great advice, but I always think it's very hard to do. It's quite a kind of abstract, airy-fairy concept. Listen to yourself. I kind of like, I know I need lots of space, and I know I'm best when I just literally switch off, give myself some space, either just spend the whole afternoon with my phone off reading, or just chilling or sleeping or whatever. But listening to myself, I never quite know what to do.
Okay, so maybe not listening to yourself, maybe switching off completely like you're talking about, maybe meditating and just letting that internal dialogue be quiet. Because I think when I say listen to yourself, I guess it's that intuition, which maybe doesn't come in the form of words or something as blatant as a sentence. Yeah. But just maybe an intuition that you know what's going to be best for you at the end of the day.
And isn't it interesting that you spent all that time consulting Dr. Google and desperately trying to find the source of your problem, but then your tip and your advice is actually learning to trust and let go and release from all that.
Yeah, because yes, there's a certain element of going out there and researching and finding new information, but I think if you listen to everyone, you're going to listen to no one. Because imagine I listened to the doctor that said I need hair transplant, and I didn't listen to my intuition that went, Celeste, come on, this is ridiculous. How do you need a hair transplant? You're like 30 years old and you're so healthy, you're doing all the right things. Something isn't right. That's my intuition talking to me. And if I didn't have the knowledge and the confidence in myself to listen to that voice, then I wouldn't have found the functional medical doctor, because I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah. And one more thing on the hair loss thing. I guess for some people, it might be genetic.
Yeah.
It might not be something that's solved by the diet.
But come on, then you'd at least have to go for the various tests that doctors would give, right?
Not necessarily just to going to the hair loss people, but also, going to the functional medicine doctor and trying it all out.
Try a few different things, and then you let your body decide. Like, try things out. Oh, look, this is working really well. Oh no, my body's not working well with this. Someone might be like, try this diet out. Your body might reject that diet.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing it.
It's a big pleasure.
Because I have a feeling that I actually think that everyone will enjoy listening to this regardless, because I think you're always good to listen to.
Thank you so much.
But I feel like for a certain fairly small percentage of people, this could be really valuable advice.
Or maybe
it's
bigger
really
than we
amazing that you're sharing
realise,
it.
but people are hiding it and secretive. Like I was super secretive.
Yeah, and actually, I personally think that the message is relevant to anything that you've got going on. If you go to the doctor, you'll get a certain standard of care which hopefully will be excellent from a medical perspective, and nothing against doctors. But functional medicine practitioners have a lot more time to give you and are looking at it from a lot of different angles. It's almost like surround sound, isn't it? They're looking at every different angle.
Yeah.
They're looking at your emotions and your mental health and everything else. So whatever's going on, might be hair loss, might be something else, that could be an avenue to go down. I've found massive benefits from speaking to functional health practitioners.
I'm so glad that you also have found that you derive benefit from it. And I think it's important to mention to your listeners that it is more expensive. You are paying for that extra time.
Yeah.
But I would rather pay more and get a result than have my free consultation for years and years and years and years and just take loads of medicines that potentially are doing more harm than good and never actually come out the other end and go, oh, look, I can see a positive change in my body.
Well, you and I have both got a good approach to spending money on things that make us feel good. Because we go to Whole Foods, we spend our mortgage, and then we go back the next day and do it again. But isn't it nice to be able to spend money on food that makes you feel good?
I hardly buy clothes. I don't really go out partying much. If I do, I don't really drink much because I'm such a lightweight. It takes like 2 drinks and I'm like, woo, party! And then drink 3 and I'm like, I'm so tired, I just want to go to sleep.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'm turning into you.
Oh my God, we're the same. And then, so I honestly feel that it depends on where your values lie. I mean, if you want to party, go for it. If that makes you happy, that's great. Do what makes you happy in life. But for me personally, I really value feeling good every day. I value doing well in my job and my relationships, and all those things take work in the sense that I need to make sure that I look after my health.
Don't worry, you're not late for your appointment. So now, I was going to say where can people find you, but you're actually doing workshops all over the world now, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm still in London most of the time. One of the things that John Gray's book inspired me to do was to make sure I know what makes me very tired, and I do less of that if it's still important to me. So I travel once a month to a different country. I think...
That's awesome.
Yeah, once a month to a different country.
And what have you got coming up over the next few months? I know you've been all over Europe the last few months, haven't you?
Next month is Turkey, and then I've got Milan, then I go to Qatar.
Wow, that's so cool.
And then Mauritius.
No way.
Yeah, it's cool.
That is absolutely... Because I remember a couple of years ago you saying, I want to do more of this.
Yeah.
And you're just doing it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm really, really proud of that as an achievement. But please, if people want to find me, I'm in London, I'm in Soho, Try Yoga. So if people want to come to class, that's where you can rock up to take a session. I love my classes in London. I'll never change them. They feed my soul. I'm Celest Pereira Yoga. So if you Google that, you'll find me.
Celeste, thank you for sharing this important message.
It's a big pleasure. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, and should we go off to Whole Foods and spend some more money?
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you. And that is it. As always, thank you for listening to Zestology. If you enjoyed it, there's plenty more podcasts on my website, tonywrighton.com. If you liked it, I'd love it if you would share it with someone else. And I'll see you next week. See you then.